by saying, to me, it's a privilege to have these two filmmakers here with us. These are excellent, excellent films, and I want to dig in just a little bit. We'll hopefully have some time for questions. Thank most of you for staying. I appreciate that. So Annalise's film, Inheritance, was made here in Vermont, and my first question, my first comment is the revealing of the deed. And the line that says, when your brother says, how did it make you feel? And you say, wrong. This is awesome. Actually, it's such a gateway into the film itself. My follow-up question from those thoughts are you settling scores? Is there something deep about Vermont in particular, or is this a more universal sentiment with respect to the white gaze? The disappearance of black folks, and in the end, the idea that black folks have to become ghosts themselves in order to turn away the white ghosts who have been basically making life insufferable for them. So, my opening salvo, is it a specific, and it could be none of that, but my opening question is are you making a comment on Vermont itself or more universally?
I think more universally. It's funny because I have gotten that question before, and I think that like Vermont and when we were filming is like maybe the most the nicest, most hospitable place I've filmed in my life. So not necessarily specifically about Vermont, but I do think that the first thing that comes to mind is sort of the idea that this family and who the family stands in for are sort of always seen as kind of outsiders, even though this family's been living there for decades. They're sort of seen as, they'll always be seen as the newcomers, even if they are. And I think that is, kind of deep in the history of New England, generally. And then with regard to the way that they disappear, I think that, and when she says they made me feel wrong, I think that I was really interested in showing ghosts that didn't, they don't have any physical way to interact with the family. They're not causing physical harm. The harm they're causing is psychological in nature. And sort of depicting that, I wasn't interested in showing physical pain or anguish for these characters, but for me too, I didn't want to do that to this family. So wanted to see what the film would be like if their main power was just their gaze.
The gaze being extraordinarily powerful.
Yes.
So the question then is this a story that revolves around the race of the family at heart?
I mean, I think it does. And I think something that, it definitely does, but I do think two things. I think about the ghosts, spirits, whatever you want to call them. Initially, in the earlier drafts, they were just neighbors, and sometimes they talked. I went through a lot of different versions, but I thought it got weird when they talked. You had more questions, then it made things more confusing. But the way I've been thinking about them is they're sort of these stand-ins, sort of representatives of the earliest colonizers of the area that feel like they have some sort of sacred duty or connection to the land, however misplaced that is. And something that Ron, who plays the dad, said that I found really interesting was he said that to him, he felt like the ghosts didn't really care that it was this family. Whatever wrong they were trying to right didn't specifically have anything to do with this family in particular, but the witnessing them kind of prospering and having accumulated this wealth over generations, just really anchored them in particular.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That is a distinction. I think it's a good distinction to make. But in my mind, the introducing of the deed and the long and sometimes so upsetting and troubling history of black families owning property, owning land in the United States, and the upset that causes to white people. It just, when you introduce the deed and the deed burns, it just got to me. Your film is operating on several levels, all at the same time, and I found that to be totally satisfying. And,
Thank you.
And kudos for doing all
Thank
that.
you. Yeah, I like love the deed, and there's so many like little Easter eggs on the piece of paper itself. Like, wish we could just do like a long like close up of it, because the art director, like there's like a seal, you know, when you on the deed, they don't look like this anymore, but like old deeds, they'd have like the seal of the town, and the seal has like all these like historical black filmmakers etched in it. He like specially made that, and there's other like little Easter eggs on it. Yeah, I think that once I wrote the film and it was out there in the world, I've heard like all these stories of people like having that happen to them. There's actually a play that takes place in Boston that has like, the deed being stolen, and that's very common. So I wasn't even totally aware of that specifically being an issue, but yeah.
Does anybody have a question for Annalise?
If I could ask a question. Yeah, then the main character turning 25, did that have anything to do with her becoming aware of like being, perceived like in the community? Was that a specific choice, that like kind of young adult age?
Yeah, the age itself didn't, 25 as a number didn't have like significance, but I think what I was trying to talk about was sort of the idea that when you're a kid or a young adult, you're not like aware of the like broader context of your life, and sort of like formalizing that idea into like a concrete time that it would happen. Yeah.
That makes sense.
You get older and you become more aware of like all the historical and cultural forces that control your life.
One last thing I'd like to talk. Oh, go ahead, Antoine.
Yeah. So, what inspired the film, and how did you get the location?
Yeah, I mean the film. I'm trying to not move this so much. The initial like concept for the film was actually the idea of a black family camping and finding a like magical campsite that made them invisible. That I was like, that would be amazing, because the idea that this family, I guess because they're, like I was saying earlier, they're always othered in this space, like finally being able to blend into the surroundings the way that anyone else does in nature. But then I was like, why would I want that invisible campsite? And then I sort of backed out from that and was like, okay, there's got to be people watching and showing how the power of being watched over years would weigh on them. And then the location is actually my mom and her brother's house, and my mom's over there in the audience. Yeah. So I was like, oh, this is free. That's great. And then we knew that we wanted to build the Maple network around the house and like spend some time really working on that, and the ability to like leave it up. We also, me and the cinematographer Charlotte Hornsby, went to the house a few times and like photographed it at every time of day. So it really helped us like in the production, because we could like go, you're like, okay, this scene will work really well at this time of day, based on the lighting and everything.
Before I go to Yuki, I do want to compliment you on all those elements. Production design is excellent. The sound is spooky. It's well done. Captures, I think, exactly what you intended to do. Did you use basically natural light on a lot of this? It struck me that you did some of the interiors.
Well, very, very little or no light in the exteriors. The interior, we did have a like we did rig some lights to the ceiling in the cabin, and actually, yeah, this is actually a really great question. The production designer and the gaffer were really close, so she bought all these really great lamps that we like outfitted the cabin with. So we had, and he like brought in all the really great like vintage light bulbs, so we had kind of a nice like overlap there for the lighting and everything. And then the sound designer, Chris Foster, is like really, really great sound designer who's just a friend of mine, and I was like, please, please. But he's done like a lot of, I think it was while he was doing this film, my film, I was like competing with Halle Berry because he was doing her feature. And he was like, I can't, like Halle needs me to do this. And I was like, I totally understand that you don't have
Strong
time for me.
competition.
Yeah, strong competition.
Well, I think your film is superb. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate you bringing it to us. Yuki, so this is a triumph, I think, what you've done here.
Thank you.
Film within the film, a wistful coming-of-age story.
Yeah.
The slacker tries to make good. Someone who recognizes his talent, but somehow there's so many barriers to him actually getting somewhere. The love story, which doesn't quite fulfill, but is beautiful while it exists. Talk to us about the film within the film, the animation content. Of course, the origin story is good, and I want to know if it's biographical. When I autobiographical, I suspect there's something there.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
also the film within the film. Animation, it's time-consuming, and yet so it's not an animated film, but it feels like it can be an animated
Sure.
film. That component lives on its own inside the film.
Yeah, basically. I guess, well, I had been doing a bit of animation in general before I started making the movie. I'd kind of switched between animation and live action. And I think, honestly, the real like motivation is that I didn't have much money at all, but I did, have time. And animation, while extremely time consuming, you can see like all the props are made out of cardboard and stuff.
Yes.
You can actually make a movie that like, for example, you can't, like, renting lights costs money, renting a really nice camera like costs money. But like you can, use a still camera, just use all digital stuff in animation. So I think I knew a large portion of the movie had to be functionally very cheap for it to exist as a whole, for it to be a whole feature. And then I think starting with that, I was like, how can I make a movie for really cheap? Oh, I could make an animation. Oh, but I really don't have the time or the manpower to make an entire animated movie. So how can I make part of it animation, part of it live action, kind of frame it so it's like that, so there's a reason why part of it is animated and why part of it's live action. So it's really just the financial reasons, I guess.
This is I think, one of the best low-budget films we've ever had.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm not saying that just because you're sitting right here a few feet from me. It really is exceedingly well done.
Thank you.
And the fact that you went into this with the idea, I don't have a lot of money, so I need to sort of parse my resources in a way that allows me to complete the film. I want to also ask about the young woman who played the other lead in the film. She was very good. She emerged through an audition process, or as a friend of yours?
I actually met her on a set when I was at film school, and I guess she kind of became a friend. Yeah, and I just wanted to work also with actors because I knew it was going to be like a low budget, set, and try to keep professional. But we were just like running around the street as I'm sure you saw. And I really wanted to work with people I know, I suppose, just so there was that level of familiarity. And she was just like a working actor in New York around our age, and I just happened to meet her. But she did really good, yeah.
She did a good job, but I thought the chemistry between them went from polite to being quite good, and then it ended. And so there was some sadness in that. But a more conventional approach, I think, would have been for them to continue on and struggle through a relationship, and then have it. It ended over content.
Yeah,
it ended over content.
Creative differences.
Creative differences,
So,
exactly.
you'd say, yeah.
Talk about the autobiographical part.
Well, that part, to be honest, is not so autobiographical. While I was making it, I wasn't sure if it was a romance, but looking at it clearly, now I can see that it is a romance. I kept explaining it to people that, like, both the lead two actors, they were both kind of represented parts of me where, like, one was very, like, oh, I don't need money, I can do what I want. The other one was like, but you do have to be like a businessman to, like, accomplish anything. And those were kind of the two forces that I was working with while I was writing the movie, and both of the characters were supposed to meant to represent both of those things, and then what happens when they collide, because they are at odds. And at their core, they do, like, both believe in the same thing, which is well, I think they got along initially, but then as you follow the threads to the end, you realize that they split apart. Yeah.
Well, the interview with Howard was pivotal.
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
And having spent 25 years at Disney dealing with contracts, yes, I can tell you that they can be hideously onerous. And you get to the point sometimes where you just sort of want to throw up your hands and I'm not going to do this deal. So I get that.
Oh, I'm glad.
That was very authentic that you introduced that into the film.
I'm glad. I honestly had no experience with that at all, so that was really,
Oh, good guess.
Yeah, okay, that's good.
Who has questions for either of the filmmakers today? You have questions? Go ahead, Antoine.
I probably missed this, but what inspired the film?
Oh, so, I guess, as I was kind of explaining, I didn't have a lot of money. I really wanted to make a movie, and I knew I had to find a way to make something for cheap, so I decided on animation. But then I realized I couldn't make an entire animated movie, so I'm like, how can I motivate an animated movie within, like, a live-action movie? And that's kind of like a filmmaker's trying to make a movie, you know, he doesn't have money.
Well, I guess I like more so what inspired the story. Where the story comes from.
Like the, what part of the story, I guess?
I guess the story of, well, it's kind of self-explanatory, but it's the story of the filmmaker, him transitions to the filmmaker.
Oh, for sure.
Kiseki.
Oh, I guess, yeah, fair enough. It's autobiographical, I guess. I had just graduated from film school, and I had like 6 months or so before my student loan payments started to begin. And to be honest, I had some leftover student loan money because I had taken like a half semester my last semester, and I was like, I have like this small amount of money, and I really want to. I also felt, you know, kind of dumb having gone to film school and then not having come out with a movie, and I was like, I really want to, you know, have something to show for like, you know, the last 4 years that I spent, and then I just kind of in a fury wrote it and shot it in like 6 or 7 months, and it took like 2 more years after that to actually do the animation and everything.
I gotta be honest, both y'all films are fire.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Any other questions for our filmmakers?
I just had a comment
Please.
about We Are Not Content. I loved how when Clara was very clear when she said that you know, well, if they're paying for it, like they own it. And I think that I really liked that it wasn't like evil creative TV like versus him. It really felt like she did something that totally made sense. It just like wasn't his path, and I think I really appreciated the nuance in that.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate that.
Just the facts is what she was stating.
Yeah.
Reality. Okay, I want to thank Annalise Lockhart, Yuki Soga for this lovely time together, and please give them a round of applause.
Thank you.